Welcome to Bereavement and Joy. We are so glad you are here. The purpose of this podcast is to facilitate a way for God to reach you right where you are. Whether stuck in bed, unable to get up, robotically going through life, or maybe you're further along in your grief journey and grief has become your companion. God has a special message for your heart. In today's episode, we are going to talk about restoration of things lost. Do you believe that God can restore things you have lost? Think about that for a moment. You know, the Bible talks about restoration quite a bit. The first one that comes to mind, of course, is in the book of Job. My friend Job, who lost so much. He lost his children, his possessions, his health, so many things. But it talks about at the end of Job's story how God restored to Job double, sevenfold the things that he had lost were restored. Jeremiah 29:11 talks about how God has a plan to prosper us and not to harm us, to give us a hope and a future. Psalms 51:12, David asks for spiritual restoration from God. In Amos 9:14, it talks about the restoration of Israel after being exiled. In Psalm 71:20, God's power can lift us from difficult situations. So much scripture talking about restoration. And you might think, I've heard all of these stories and I read these things in the Bible, but how does that apply to me? I don't think God's ever restored something in my life. Is He still in the business of restoration? And I can tell you the answer to that is He is. And He actually restored a very traumatic event for me that happened in the passing of my son. And it was the first time I think I have truly understood and felt true restoration, like God taking a situation that I thought was unredeemable, unrestorable, and made it new and restored it and changed the way that my mind saw it. So I'd like to share that with you in today's episode to show you that God is still in the business of restoration. So in the last episode, you learned that our son BJ was an organ donor. So when you are an organ donor, the hospital does what they call an honor walk for the one who is donating the organs. And so what happens is after he passes, it does take a few days for them to coordinate the donation of the organs. We've got to find the right recipients, the timing. You've got to know where the organs need to go. There's a lot of background organization that needs to happen and timing that needs to take place in order for everything to come together. So there's this time that he is at the hospital. He's passed away, but he's staying at the hospital on life support while they're coordinating all the organs and where they're going and who they're going and what time everything is going to take place. And then we would return to the hospital to have this honor walk, which is him being pushed down the hallway to the surgical room where they'd be harvesting his organs. And we would walk with his bed, and there was people lined up in the hallway, nurses, family, friends, just showing honor. And it's meant to be just that, a time of honor. Although it's a sad time that our son had passed, it was supposed to be a moment to honor the fact that he was giving miracles, before he transitioned to his permanent home in heaven. And it could have been that for us. However, our experience at that hospital was not a pleasant one. So if we had had what we needed to have, some compassion, some honor, some respect as his family prior to this honor walk, it probably would have been what it was meant to be. But that's not what it was for us. I don't want to go into a lot of details about what happened, but let's just say that the trauma and shock of losing my son was one thing, but the way we were treated at that hospital was a whole nother trauma that was put on us. We arrived very early in the morning, 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning, when we found out that he was no longer breathing on his own and had been declared brain dead. We showed up. We were able to go in the room. Of course, we're in shock. All of this just happened. We're trying to wrap our minds around everything. We were in the room for a while that morning, and then suddenly everything started to turn. We were taken out of the room. We were told that we couldn't go back in the room. We were suddenly told, after we'd been here with him a while, already been in the room with him, with doctors, etc., that he had COVID and we couldn't all go in the room. They would only allow one person in the room for the rest of the day. There was no coming in and out, one single person, and that was it. So obviously his wife was in there with him. I had my brother who had flown in from out of state. He found out that morning, somehow got on a flight and was standing in the hospital by lunchtime that day, but then was told that he couldn't go up into the area where my son was. We were shunned out of waiting areas. We had a family room they had assigned to us at one point so that we would have a space to go. And then suddenly we were told we needed to get out of that space. There was just a lot of trauma. We even had a disrespectful remark made at one point when I was just trying to understand what was happening and why I couldn't be back in the room with my son, and that we understood that there couldn't be a lot of people going in the room, but even if we took turns and it was only one person at a time, I mean, at this point, we already had exposure to the COVID. None of this was making any sense whatsoever. And had one of the staff look at me and say, "Your son is dead. What else do you want from us?" And I was just whirling in shock and in pain and confusion. I just found out my son died and then had to take on the trauma of trying to navigate through all that was happening at this hospital that was just adding to our trauma. So by the time it came time for the honor walk, I had had very little time alone. I'd had no time alone with my son at all. We never really got a proper chance to say goodbye to him. All of the trauma at the hospital had just made me not even want to step back into that hospital. And yet we were supposed to be doing this walk of honor. But it didn't feel like that at the moment. It didn't feel like that at all. There was too much trauma associated with it. I hated the moment walking down the hall, if I am honest, with everyone staring at me. And in that moment, I just wanted everyone to go away. And I just wanted a moment alone with my son. And I didn't want to have to be saying goodbye to him in front of everybody at the door of the surgery room. That wasn't what I had wanted, and it wasn't how I had envisioned this, and it didn't make the honor walk a good memory at all. And it added again to the trauma and everything we were trying to navigate through and finding our footing after finding out our son had passed away. So here's where the restoration part comes in. So I'm going to say I'm not going to be perfect on the timing because grief brain is a thing as well. You lose memory. It's been 2.5 years since BJ passed away. The past 2.5 years, honestly, are a big blob of time kind of all conjungled together. That's how it feels when you're going through grief and when you're trying to reassociate and re-engage in life. So I don't remember exact timing, but I'm going to say within the year after he passed away. there came an opportunity, not by the hospital that we had had the bad experience with, but by another hospital. It was Organ Donor Month, and they did an honor walk and chose a family to honor. That you would come in, get to speak about the person, the donor. So we would get to speak about BJ and get to do an honor walk outside, around the outside of the hospital, in honor of him. So he was not a patient at this hospital, as I said, but one of the people that were sitting on the board that was putting together this honor walk knew my daughter, by association. They weren't friends, but she knew her through an event that they had done together. Somehow she knew her as an acquaintance. So she thought about her immediately. She had, seen on Facebook that BJ had passed away. So she reached out to our daughter and said, "Hey, do you think your family? We're looking for a family to honor, and you came to mind." Of course we did, because God was orchestrating a restoration. So He needed her to think of us. So we decided at first, when I heard the word honor walk, trauma trigger, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to go through that again. That was not a good experience. That was not a fun thing. But as they talked about what they were going to do, I felt a peace in my heart. I believe God just gave me this peace to say, look, walk forward with me. I'm going to do something. I want to restore this. I want to take away the ugliness of this. I want to take away the trauma. I don't want that to be the memory you have from that honor walk. I want to restore the things that were taken from you unjustly. And I want to make them right. So we agreed to go and do this honor walk. We were a little nervous, a little bit of anxiety, because again of that little trigger word of honor walk wasn't making me feel warm and happy. But when we arrived at that hospital that morning, they had a room set aside for us with coffee, with donuts, with little gift bags, just such a welcoming environment. They met us at the door. They gave us a hug. They took us back to that room. They made sure we were comfortable. They gave us what we needed. They came in. They talked to us. They asked us questions about BJ. They allowed us to talk about our son and process through things. Prior to us arriving at the hospital, the few days before, the pastor of that hospital had called my husband and I and had spent some time on the phone talking about BJ so he could get to know him, get to know things about BJ, what we loved about him, the music we wanted to play on this honor walk. Just they made everything very personal and took time to listen and care and show us compassion. And I couldn't help but think, as we walked in that room, it was the beginning of the restoration, because it's like, wow, we feel welcomed in this room. We have the things we need. They are showing great compassion and care and honor to our family. They truly are. They then walked in with a life-size picture of BJ that they had printed out, because we had given them some photos. They had printed this huge picture that we were going to use to do the honor walk with. And it was like I had left to go to the restroom and was coming back as they were unveiling it and showing it to us before we went out to do the honor walk. And it took my breath away because it was so life-size. It was like BJ was standing right there. That photo was so real. But they had such compassion and such care. And as we went outside and there was hospital staff and friends and family there, and we were able to talk about BJ, was able to talk about who he was as a person, who he had helped, how we felt about him being an organ donor, encouraging others to do the same thing, to be a part of the miracles. And then it came time to take the honor walk. And as we began to take this walk, I couldn't help but smile and feel such peace and joy starting to just cover that ugly part of what I had felt when I heard the word honor walk. It was a beautiful day outside that day. The sun was shining, and we were getting ready to hold up this large picture of our son, walk around outside. Now, BJ and I, that was our thing to do together, was take walks together outside. We used to walk around the lakefront. We could walk forever, for hours and hours, and talk, and that was our way of bonding and hanging out. So by no coincidence, that was the way this honor walk was going to happen, outside in the sunshine, walking with BJ one more time, like we had done so much when he was alive. They played worship music, his favorite songs. We had told them the ones that we wanted to hear, and they honored him with songs that meant a lot to us and to him. There was so much that was released in that walk, that short walk around the hospital outside, honoring our son, getting honor ourselves and respect. It's like God didn't leave a detail out. You were kicked out of that room, we're going to give you a room, and we're going to honor you, and we're going to have what you need, and we're going to show you respect. And we're going to do an honor walk that will make you smile. God says, I'm going to restore that honor walk for you. And you're going to walk outside around this building, and I'm going to give you the most beautiful day for it to happen. And it's going to restore the things that were taken away from you in the original honor walk. And we were able to praise God and listen to worship music and just feel for the first time restoration for an event that felt so traumatic and so uncomfortable. Now had a beautiful memory to it. It was restored. And as we finished, they weren't quick to rush us out. God did not miss a detail. As I told you before, we were in the room and then they had kicked us out of the room. After it was all done, they said, come back to the room is still yours. Come back, have another cup of coffee. We got to get the kids some donuts. Just kind of hang out in here. And again, they stayed and they listened and they talked to us. And they talked about BJ and they gave us words of comfort and words of hope. It is a day that I will not forget. A day that God restored a moment in my life, something that I felt had been stolen. An honor walk that was meant to be an honor that was not. And He made sure that it was restored and that we got what we were meant to have from the beginning. Restoration is possible. God is still in the business of restoration. I experienced it in the story I just shared with you. And He's not just doing it for me. He's not just doing it for the people that we read about in the Bible. He's the same God, yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And He would love to restore something you've lost. He would love to restore a situation. He came, He has plans to prosper you and not to harm you, to give you a hope and a future. I hope you will be open to that thought. I hope that this story will help you understand that God cares about the details of our lives. He didn't miss a detail in what He needed to restore in that honor walk for BJ. And I will be forever grateful. Thank you for listening to Bereavement and Joy. I hope this has encouraged you. If so, please subscribe and share, and I would love to hear from you. Please message me at Tracy@bereavementjoy.org. Until next time.